the idea that children, when they're being brought up, they have to be taught how to behave before they believe. In order for that to happen, you've got to have a structure, but that structure of the family actually has to have a direction.
When we sort of arrive on this earth and we're told, make your own way without any of those structures, you're no better off than, and there's an actual phrase that's used in Hebrew called tinok shenishba, a baby born in a forest. The idea is that a baby born in a forest has no actual moral obligations because there's no structures around them. And we've created an entire society of babies in the forest.
And they're insecure, and they have more problems with mental health than any other generation has ever had before. I'm sure you remember the famous experiment. You take children out for recess, and there's no fence, and the children all stay huddled closely together by the building. The minute you put a fence, the children wander all around the yard and play. Those boundaries make children safe, and it makes children feel safe. If they don't have boundaries, they're not safe.
Whew, that is good. I'm going to say the last part again real quick. If children have boundaries, they feel safe. If there are no boundaries, they do not feel safe.
Amazing. Well, I just want to take a minute just to talk about Voddie, if we can do that. He's been such an important voice just for the family in the last 2 decades. He is really an amazing pastor and preacher. I've spoken at homeschool conferences side by side with him. He was in one room, I was in the other room. And so it was very special. And what he did in his family, he was in Africa for many years, the president of a seminary there, came back here, had some heart trouble, and went to be with the Lord a couple of days ago. And boy, that was a surprise. And are we ever going to miss Voddie's impact, his voice? I know his family is grieving, although we know we don't grieve like others, but we have lost some important people in our lives in the last couple of weeks.
You know, this clip actually makes me, and I think we should still talk about what he said too, but this clip, not that we're happy people die, but how great is it that people like this have felt like they've had a message, really from God, Voddie would say from the Bible, he's a pastor, that they can record it and it is so easily accessible. I think that is such, we had mentioned Martin Luther King Jr. a while ago, and you can still access his speeches and stuff like that, but it is not near what we're in now, like with Charlie Kirk, with Voddie, like their content is everywhere. It can be watched again and again and again and interpolated and researched. And I think that's kind of a cool thing. Like that's a really cool, great thing. Like when we're talking to our children about these people who have passed and, it opens conversations about heaven and Jesus and the plan. And then we can show them like, hey, here's who they were and here's what they said and here's why it was important to the family of faith. I love what he said about boundaries. So same page. We can do this quick, Zan. Do we agree that the primary person who should put boundaries for the children are the parents?
Yes, absolutely.
So if the child is shipped away the majority of the time, how are any of those boundaries enforced? How do they know the boundaries are even happening? Boundaries in the way they speak to other people, they speak to adults, boundaries about keeping secrets. I heard recently someone said, man, I just love that my kids get to go to school and maybe they can have their own little private ecosystem. It's like, what? Like, your 9-year-old? And so I just love that people have spoken out loud that, hey, boundaries, especially when it comes to children, are important. They're biblical. And you should be encouraged to pray about the right boundaries to set for your children.
One of the things you were talking about with all of the information being so accessible from Charlie Kirk and from Voddie, it reminds me of the verse in Hebrews that talks about Abel, even though he was dead, by faith he still speaks.
Oh,
And, and that's how I feel with these people of faith who have gone to heaven before us, that by faith they still speak. And really have maybe a more remarkable voice in death than they did in life.